Welcome once again to our second night of our Expresión Storytelling Showcase. I will be joined today by four storytellers across the nation to share their stories. But first of all, let me tell you a little bit about our LEC. Again, I'm Ivan Ramirez, and the LEC mission is to create the necessary conditions for the advancements of Latino youth. The LEC collaborates with educators, parents, caregivers, students, families to improve the educational outcome and experiences of Latino students across K 12 education. Our goal is to increase representation and retention of Latino educators, leading to a more diverse system, more diverse schools, and also a culturally responsible educational environment. Expresión is one of those initiatives that we have had for about 3 years, thanks to the partnership with Storytellers for Change, which you will hear a little bit more about Luis Ortega and more about our Expresión Storytelling Fellowship. But before we keep going, I once again welcome everybody for being here. Hopefully, you are comfortable at your home. And that you really enjoy and open your hearts to the stories that we're about to listen. Before we keep going, I want to bring my partner in this work, Luis Ortega, for an acknowledgement and also a little bit overview of our Expresión Storytelling Showcase.
Hey, everyone. Buenas tardes, buenos días, buenas noches, dependiendo donde se encuentren. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm Luis Ortega. My pronouns are he and them. I'm the founder and director at Storytellers for Change, and I'm joining you from the unceded territories of the Duwamish and the Coast Salish people. That is known to many people today as Seattle, Washington. And I'm also going to extend an acknowledgement to the lands and the people that are the original stewards of the place where the Latinx Education Collaborative currently resides, and that is the Kickapoo, the Osage, the Ko, the Missouri, and the Sioux tribes. I want to fundamentally acknowledge these indigenous peoples and land and recognize them not only as the original stewards, but also the original storytellers of those lands. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you so much, Ivan, for grounding us on this gathering. Yesterday, we had an opportunity to hear from four incredible storytellers and educators who are part of our third cohort of Expresión Storytelling Fellows. Tonight, we get to hear from four additional storytellers, and I just want to tell you a little bit about why we believe so fundamentally in the power of stories, and the stories, las historias de nuestros maestres, nuestras maestras, nuestros maestros, the stories of our teachers. I fundamentally believe, and our work at Storytellers for Change is guided by this belief that the well-being of our schools, the well-being of our society, the well-being of our lives is directly interconnected to the stories we tell. And to me, it is undeniable to recognize that our current education system, our current society, it's moving in a direction that is yet to fully acknowledge historically, systematically, the brilliance, the abundance, the joy, the beauty, the belonging that inherently exists within the lives of our Latina and Latinx educators. This can also be said of so many other groups that historically have been and continue to be systematically marginalized. And it is our mission at Storytellers for Change to collaborate with partners like the Latinx Education Collaborative to create the spaces where these stories can be nurtured, where we can acknowledge, yes, what at many times is the hurt and the grief that is there in our communities. And at the same time, to ensure that we always return to the beauty, the joy, the potential for healing and empowerment that is so abundant and present in each one of us. When our educators are able to nurture their own stories, when they're able to reaffirm their identities, when they're able to engage with their own narratives through an asset-based and healing-centered perspective, we create the conditions for teaching and learning to flourish in such a way that can move our entire schools, our classrooms, our education systems, our communities in the direction of liberation and freedom. So I want to thank our partners at the Latinx Education Collaborative for making our third cohort possible. It's been such an honor each time to be able to be with our storytellers in this process, acompañándolas, acompañándolos en este proceso de sanación y liberación a través de nuestras historias. So with that, thank you to our partners. Thank you to every single one of our fellows from our first and second cohort for learning with us, helping us to make these fellowship bodies today. And thank you and congratulations to our latest cohort of storytellers. I am now going to invite my dear friend and colleague, Ivan Ramirez, who you just met, to come back so that he can introduce our first storyteller for this evening.
Okay, I believe we have some comments. There are some comments already coming in from social media. Revolución Educativa, our partners in this work, they're already watching. Also, somebody's excited about the stories, and we haven't even started. So let me first introduce our first storyteller. Emily Gasca comes from Chicago, Illinois. And when we asked Emily, what does storytelling as an act of resistance means, she says that story sharing, that sharing a story from the perspective that honors all parties involved, but is rooted in the truth and beliefs. It's the ability to engage with others despite our differences and coming together for a shared vision. This is Emily Gasca, and we are ready to listen to her story. So hopefully you are ready for this. Let's welcome Emily.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So, let me begin mi historia. Como una semilla plantada en el alma, the story of how I began my journey as an educator. It began in Mr. Taylor's fifth grade classroom. Yo era una estudiante callada, tímida y con muchos pensamientos que no me permitían enfocarme. We all sat at our desks, set up in columns of 4. Every day after lunch, we would all take out a book of choice and read for 20 minutes of sustained silent reading. I can remember seeing Mr. Taylor sitting at his desk reading as well. A moment I'll treasure. I didn't know it at the time, but that year he would change the trajectory of my life. Ese año se plantó la semilla de amor hacia la lectura. That year, I grew so much as a reader. Everything just started to come alive. The words took on meaning, and I was using my imagination to see the words come to life. It's the first memory I have of reading a story that captivated me. All of a sudden, the comprehension strategies I had learned all came together to spark a joy for reading. No es que no fuera una lectora, pero no podía poner atención a las palabras porque no me interesaban. Todo cambió ese año, gracias a un maestro por darme la oportunidad de descubrir la magia de un libro. I enjoyed it so much, I was asking my mom to buy me books at every store we went to. Pero Mr. Taylor era diferente. Aside from SSR, he was one of the few teachers who invested his time in building his students' trust. He empowered us. He held us accountable. He amplified our gifts and talents in a way others had never done, not even my family. Él realmente se preocupaba por nosotros y nos entendía. Él nos veía como colegas. Fue un mentor, entrenador y nos guiaba. He wasn't from Chicago. He was here because he followed the love of his life. Cuando él enseñaba, cautivaba nuestra atención. He was just different. Everything he taught us about life, building our character, and empowering us went unsaid. It was by his actions that we knew he truly cared. Ahí es donde mi fortaleza y lucha comenzó, y la razón por la cual lucho día tras día. One day, he asked me to tutor a student who was a non-reader. That was a game changer. I was not the smartest student or the highest reader, but I was born a teacher. He saw a greatness in me I didn't see, shattering all doubt. I was barely getting by and tapping into the wonderful world of reading, but he chose me. I felt a sense of confidence that I had never experienced. I had always been the shy and timid student who wanted to be seen but just felt unheard. So I hid and remained silent. como una mariposa en un jardín que no hace ruido, no tiene sonido visible al oído, pero marcada con colores maravillosos y brillantes. That year, right before we went on summer break, he invited his girlfriend for Career Week. He asked her to speak to us about her career as a future optometrist. ¿Cómo es el amor? Un maestro cautivado por una mujer dejó su vida en Kansas City para seguirla mientras estudiaba. And right there in room 203, he got down on one knee and proposed. The following year, during 6th grade, he came back to teach us again and told us all about the best day of his life. Qué lindos recuerdos me dejó Mr. Taylor, y más que recuerdos, cambió mi historia. Él fue uno de los únicos maestros que me vio por primera vez por mis fortalezas. He truly had a way to inspire and motivate us when it seemed like all hope was lost. I never thought about this story until now, and I am able to make the connections that my teaching career began the day when I was chosen to be the one to tutor my classmate. I am grateful for teachers like Mr. Taylor, who can see greatness in his students, even when the students can't see it in themselves. There was nothing cognitively wrong. There was no developmental delays. I was just a child who entered the school system with a mistaken identity because of the trauma I had experienced before setting foot in a classroom. So I struggled with reading. The story doesn't stop there. Due to the lack of comprehension and being a late bloomer, by 8th grade, I was a struggling reader and did not pass 8th grade with the rest of my classmates. I missed out on all the 8th grade celebrations. That really hurt. During 7th and 8th grade, I had entered a traditional middle school setting and couldn't keep up. I missed the Iowa standardized assessment cutoff by 3 points. That 7.5 stuck with me and it changed me. I, along with 2 boys, did not pass and had to go to summer school. I felt humiliated, defeated, and hopeless again. I would cry out how dumb I was and that I hated reading. Pero deep down inside, yo sabía que sí se puede. Y la lucha comenzó. I was selected as the victim of a failed education system with a faulty reading belief and approach. I wasn't dumb. I didn't hate reading, but that was the easy way through at the time. En ese momento no tenía lucha. Mi fortaleza fue testeada. It was as if I was seated as a victim, but God had mighty plans for this luchadora. He allowed the pain to birth my purpose. He placed within me a passion for reading and made me a warrior. That passion and the challenges led me to teach others how to read in a joyful environment filled with peace and love. As the journey continued, it was as if I was dying outside, but emerging inside. High school was fun and much easier, passed with good grades. In senior year, I decided I was going to college to be a teacher. Simple, right? I love kids and I wanted to become the teacher I did not have as a child learning to read in kindergarten. My teachers missed the mark somewhere y yo estaba determinada a ayudar a todos mis estudiantes y luchar por ellos. Years later, I found myself, since I had learned how to be an advocate for my students and fight for their needs, even if it was something that I did not want, but I knew was best for them. I keep their needs at the forefront of my mind. I was inspired to become a teacher, an advocate, and a change agent. What started off as a little seed grew into my purpose in life and mission. Within my first year, I learned I'm not highly qualified to teach my most struggling students how to read. So I went back to grad school. I received a master's degree as a reading specialist. I was determined to close the gap of every struggling reader in my classroom and to become the teacher I wish I had early on in my academic career. As a kindergarten teacher, I fully understood the assignment. I was responsible for laying the foundational reading skills needed to be a skilled reader, and it worked. For some, but not all my students were walking away meeting their goals. This is when the inquiry and self-determination kicked in. I was facing challenges in my classroom, at home with my husband, children, and my parents. It was as if everything was slowly falling apart, but this was familiar. I had been here before and been victorious. So I surrendered all of myself to God. Todo sucedió tan rápido que lo único que me daba paz era leer y escribir. I started to question my beliefs and was in search of a relationship with God. I started to be an avid reader and walking through the process of learning to read about a new topic I was not familiar with. I started to read the Bible. As I opened up the Bible, it was written in a form that I really had to dissect to comprehend. I would read, then write down a verse. As I wrote the verse, I was highlighting words and looking up the definition. I started to notice this is like a rule book and I have to unpack them. I was hungry to learn more. This strategy was a game changer. I was looking up a word and defining them, but then I would read the antonyms. I was experiencing the same feeling I did in Mr. Taylor's fifth grade classroom, and I loved it. My life was transforming, and I have never been the same. La vida no es fácil. Los momentos difíciles lo son los que más marcan nuestro camino. Through this journey, I learned how to advocate for my students and fight for their individual needs. I was inspired to become a teacher, an advocate, and a change agent once again. What started off as a little seed grew into my purpose and mission in life. Right now, our country is in desperate need of a revival. 1/3 of our fourth graders are struggling readers. Half of the incarcerated population in the state of Texas are struggling readers. The statistics are devastating, but there is hope. The research needed through the science of reading is paving the way for all students, despite their backgrounds and upbringings, to have an equal opportunity to learn to read through explicit and systematic instruction. I know because I lived through this experience firsthand, not once, but twice. I now serve as a multilingual reading specialist. I'm also part of the National Policy Advisory Board in partnership with Teach Plus. It's a bipartisan organization that is working to shift the narrative of our education system. La lucha apenas comienza. Mi voz me ha llevado a hablar con senadores y compartir la mesa con Miguel Cardona, el secretario de Educación de los Estados Unidos. I'm always learning, always growing, and unlearning systems that were instilled through past generations who may have not known better. But it's up to us. We must use our voice and tell our stories to change the narrative para nuestra gente. This journey has given birth to a new purpose, something bigger. Yo soy una luchadora. I am a warrior. I am highly favored and chosen by God. Yo soy Emily Gasca. I am the reading environmental specialist, creating a framework that cultivates a reading environment filled with love, peace, and joy on one mission: to be a voice for all our future generations learning to read. Thank you. Gracias.
Emily, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's important to hear because you elevate some points what many of us go through in the educational system. Thank you to Mr. Taylor for picking you. And then through that, it has created many ripple effects, and you're affecting many, many, many students. I do have a question for you about how this fellowship has influenced your sense of connection to the field of education.
This fellowship has allowed me to walk the journey of putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, and I know it's still to come. So it's allowed me to be able to define that past, the present, and see the hope for the future. And all of it is connected with the education, the passion that I have to help our students become, better readers and just have a sense of hope in their lives.
Yeah. Y la lucha sigue, como dices tú. It still goes on. Well, thank you for being with us, and thank you for sharing your story.
Gracias. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
We are getting more comments from social media. So if you're watching us, yeah, make sure you make comments on YouTube, on Facebook. We are live on LinkedIn. Here's another great story, Emily, a beautiful story of perseverance in the face of an unfortunately broken educational system. So we are getting ready to welcome our storyteller. Unfortunately, Michael could not be here with us today. However, he did send his recording of his story and the answer to a question that we asked at the end. So bear with us as we prepare this recording. But yeah, Michael.
In the kitchen, where the aromas of chiles toasting and simmering dishes intertwine, my story gravitates to this room where I find comfort. I hear the clinking of utensils as they dance in the cazuela of food that they are stirring, the screech of the iron comal as it slides along the grates of the stove, and the background noises of reporters introducing a video of La Bruja de Monterrey on Primer Impacto. Memories come to life in the kitchen, and the kitchen is where I go to connect with these memories. The kitchen is a refuge. It's a sanctuary where generations have gathered to share stories, laughter, and love. As I stand before my stove, I'm reminded of the intense connection between food and memory. Each ingredient holds within it a fragment of our history. From the humblest of spices to the most cherished family cenas, our culinary traditions serve as a link to our roots, anchoring us to the lands and cultures from which we hold dear. I'm transported back to two kitchens, one in Pomona, California, and one in El Rancho de Santa Juana. The scent of spices fills the air in both. When I'm in Pomona, I see and feel the cold red tile on the floor, an L-shaped table hugging the kitchen walls, y mi mamá tending to the food at the stove. When I'm in Santa Juana, I see teal walls, una olla de barro en la estufa, a window that gives the perfect view of broken soda bottles up on top of that brick adobe wall. And I hear mi mamá, mi tía Pilla, mi tía Lolín, y mi abuelita telling stories, new and old. Regardless of being transported acá o allá, here's where I make my personal connection to my family through the language of food. But beyond the act of providing nourishment for one's appetite, food served as a conduit for connection, a way to bridge the gap between past and present. As I knead the dough and shape it into delicate circles, I'm reminded of the hands that taught me. This heals both my body and my soul. With each roll, pinch, slam, and burn, I honor the legacy and her memory. I carry forward the traditions that have shaped my family for generations and find comfort in sharing these skills with my nephews. Though they never had the opportunity to meet their abuelita, I get to share this timeless tradition that connects them to her. Weeks ago, I asked my 12-year-old nephew to assist me with a tall order. In the warm glow of my kitchen, my nephew and I kneaded the dough for a traditional pan dulce, conchas, inspired by the colors of the LGBTQ+ community. His small hands, dusted with flour, mirrored the motions of those who came before us, connecting us to the lineage of love and tradition. Each fold and twist of the dough is a dance. It's a celebration of our culture, binding us to the past and influencing our future. As I gather around the table with loved ones, be it family or friends, the warmth of freshly cooked dishes envelops me like a familiar embrace. Here, amidst the clinking of plates and the hum of conversation, I find solace in the simple act of sharing a meal. A simple universal practice. In each bite, we taste not just the flavors of our heritage, but the memories of those who came before us. I feel loved. The kitchen is where simple ingredients become family traditions. We can find and create connections to our past, a celebration of our culture, and a celebration of loved ones. Gracias. In the kitchen, where the
My initial response was that it was the opportunity to be able to explore and reflect on one's past experiences and how those experiences shape one's outlook on life and how we can engage with others. And to build on that, especially the engaging with others, when we're thinking of our students, we have to think about that growth mindset. We need to think about our diverse learners. I currently work with many of our emerging bilingual, emerging multilingual students, often newcomers to the country, newcomers to the language. So relationships is such a vital part for them to be able to learn and feel like they
Okay, now we are back. We're having technical difficulties with the recording, which we can share later on social media, but we can keep going with our storytelling showcase. And up next, we have La Doctora Eva. We asked Doctora Eva, what does storytelling mean as a practice of freedom? And she answered that as a Latina educator and a mother raising a biracial child in the US, storytelling as a practice of freedom means using her bilingual voice to share narratives that celebrate cultural richness, challenge stereotypes, and empower her to shape a more inclusive educational environment for her son and her students. Okay, I think she is ready. So up next, we have La Doctora Eva.
Hi, everybody. Well, I'm so happy and thrilled to share my story. Here we go. As I near the end of my second year as an au pair with a wonderful host family, I made a bold move, applying for a Spanish teaching position at a high school in Denver. It was bold because I didn't have a Spanish endorsement. I was highly qualified to teach English, but I aimed for the Spanish role due to lingering self-doubt. Could I really teach English without being a native speaker? And my accent, would it undermine my credibility? I remember having a great interview with the principal and assistant principal. When they asked why I wanted to teach Amabelo, a majority Latinx student community, I firmly said, because I can relate to the students. Son mi gente. It was during this encounter that I first met Mrs. H, the assistant principal who believed in me and offered me an English teaching position, not the Spanish position I had originally applied for. On my first day, Mrs. H introduced me to Mr. Taylor, a seasoned and stern teacher. Initially, I sensed Mr. Taylor's skepticism toward yet another novice teacher who might soon give up on the profession. She also introduced me to Miss Conley, an experienced and friendly teacher. I confess that I was terrified about teaching for the first time in the US. Miss Conley was nothing but kind and encouraging. I still treasure the note she penned before my first day of school. Eva, I just wanted to start your first few days with sunshine. You will do fine. See you when I get back from Africa. Miss Conley, room 180. P.S. Here are notepads and a solar daisy. The lipstick is for your lovely smile. Kick butt the first few weeks. The first week seemed like an eternity. Nights blended into mornings as I struggled over lesson plans, trying to make sense of the curriculum. The situation was made worse one day when a student changed my name to bitch, and I felt like I wasn't in control of anything. I was utterly struggling. The following week, in the middle of the chaos of my teaching day, the principal interrupted my class frantically, immediately directing me to go downtown to talk to a human resources manager because there was an issue that demanded immediate attention. I drove downtown and my mind was racing, not knowing what could be so pressing that I had to leave in the middle of the day. When I finally got there, the HR employee ordered me to apply for a new visa at the US Embassy in Mexico. I was broke. I didn't even have my first paycheck to be able to buy plane tickets. I was devastated, thinking that maybe this was a sign that I was not meant to be a teacher in the US. I thought about quitting the job and my dreams. I came home to my host parents, sobbing and feeling crushed. It was so hard to ask for help. I usually don't ask for help, but I decided to swallow my pride and borrow money from my host family to pay for the trip expenses. They wholeheartedly encouraged and supported my journey. As my students navigated substitute teachers in my absence, I waited for my new work visa. I had time to sleep and reflect on what I really wanted in life. I ate a lot of tacos and spent quality time with my grandma in her kitchen. When my visa arrived, I came back to Denver ready to take on the challenge. I chose to teach and stayed at a turnaround high school, which was being phased out. One of my proudest accomplishments happened here during my second year as a teacher in the US. My Montbello seniors got a 100% passing rate in the AP Spanish Language and Culture test. I chose to listen to my sponsor, Mrs. H., who hired me, nurtured me as a teacher, and saw my potential as a leader. I chose to lean on veteran teachers and learn from their experience and wisdom, my mentors, Ms. Conley and Mr. Taylor. I chose to believe that I do belong. I speak multiple languages and have a similar cultural background than a lot of my students. I am a bilingual educator, and that is one of my superpowers. This was only one of the many challenges I have had through my career as an educator. I often question how I have made it this far into the field. It's not a secret that there's a shortage of teachers in this nation, and more so of bilingual teachers. I can only offer a few tips that have worked for me that might help you in your journey as a bilingual teacher. Tip number one, focus your energy on our children. That's why educators are needed to prepare the next generation of leaders, and this is no small task. Do it well, do it con orgullo y con mucho amor. Tip number two, find sponsors and mentors at your school, or what I would call padrinos y madrinas, compadres y comadres. They can support you during difficult times and launch you into your next career aspirations. Tip number three, display positive reminders. I have a board in my office with thank you notes from students and colleagues and pictures of my family and my son. And when I have a really tough day, I read the notes and I look at the pictures as they give me strength to keep going and remind me of why I do what I do. Y como se dice en mi tierra, el pilón, el último tip, the last tip, tip number four. Embrace your whole linguistic repertoire. In a diverse educational landscape, your full linguistic and cultural self is a treasure, not a hindrance. It is easy to doubt whether you belong or if your accent or background diminishes your credibility as an educator in a predominantly English environment. Use it to connect with students, enrich lessons, and foster inclusivity. Your accent and diversity add unique value to your teaching. Model being proud of who you are. Muchas gracias.
Emily, Eva, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really
Oh, well,
excited.
no, thank you for sharing your story. It shows the value of a support system that we need through our careers. And then your list. I think that's an important list. We should print that list and put it here. I don't know. I like that list. But like everybody else, I have one question for you. You, how has the fellowship influenced your sense of connection to the field of education?
Well, I'm really grateful that I found you guys in the fellowship because it has confirmed that I am on the right path, that I am a very passionate educator, and more than that, it's just a space that has allowed me to collectively heal and hold hands virtually with other amazing Latina educators. And this is an experience that I will treasure forever.
No, and you're part of the LEC now. We hope to see you sometime here in Kansas City, or yeah, if we ever are out there in Colorado, we'd love to meet you as well. Yeah,
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
yeah. Thank you. We'll see you later. Okay, we have more comments. Miriam Gonzalez, she's also listening or watching our live stream. Uh, Comments from before. Kudos to Emily. Gracias for the work with children. Thank you for sharing, Emily. You are a luchadora. And then in regards to La Doctora Eva and how she mentioned that bilingualism is a superpower, we have Revolución Educativa saying that Secretary Miguel Cardona agrees, must agree about the bilingualism being a superpower. So with that, we are near the end. We have one more storyteller. And then later on, we have a few storytellers that were not able to be with us. Doctora Teresa Torres, as well as Alicia is coming back to finish her story at a later date. So we'll keep you updated. And if you're rewatching this, check out our social media channels and look for that third showcase. But we asked Dwayne, what does it mean to engage in storytelling as a practice of freedom? And this is his answer. To engage in storytelling as a practice of freedom means to observe and positively act on the human experience. Now, with rummaging and unearthing the negative past. In order to positively act, one must consider the medium of their own storytelling, whether it be through drawing, writing, interviewing, or orally convening their thoughts for their audience to access the storyteller's world. As more and more souls converge to share, retell, and learn from one another, others are developing their skills such as confidence, capability, and inspiration to narrate their own non-monolithic stories. The authenticity of all stories serve as a reminder to the listener, you are your own creator. So without further ado, let's welcome Dwayne.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. My name is Dwayne, and this is my story titled Let Love Lighten the Way by me, Elu. It's 2005 in some rusted blue apartments in Arizona, and it's 5 p.m. Mamita was away working at her graveyard shift. Papa was close by, snoring on the floral couch at his graveyard shift. Mi hermanita was watching televisión on the tired floorwood tile, and I was wanting to play. He, the distant relative, knew this was the moment my sibling and I were alone. You want to play a game? He asked in Spanish. Sí, I replied. He called the game Tickles. He said, I'll show you in the way we can go back and play in my room. As I watched the door slowly lock behind me, he flicks the lights off, and the shadow begins to shift towards me. You never really forget the moment you feel a non-motherly touch, but strangely, a stranger's touch feels familiar. Once the living room clock began to glow in the dark, I remember my innocence and my curiosity being guided by his evil touch that night. I question, 2 decades later, when does the conscious begin to conceptualize a moment in which their childlike wonder begins to dissipate into the abyss, the lifeless, the nebulous black hole? There and then, so many thoughts and questions begin to cloud and permeate through my heart, my neural, and my body cells. A sensation of numbness would engulf me until I began to understand my victim and survivorhood. Until I began to understand my victim and survivorhood, I wondered, where was Mamita when I wanted to curl up in her arms? Tears parallel my thoughts as I asked, where was Papa when I wanted to ask him to play with me? The way my teen self conceptualized this moment was by blaming two known sins: addiction to money and addiction to alcohol. 2 decades since that moment has passed, new revelations have soothed my soul. It was out of necessity to house strangers and relatives to live with us. It was out of necessity to work 2 jobs to provide the best for us. It was out of necessity to take care of my sibling because every day, for years, it was just us. Although it is my own journey of self-discovery, the desire to ignite a social dialogue and healing collective with my family and the world grows and grows each day. Apart from this self-discovery are the questions and comments I have saved for years. I now finally reveal them into the ether. To my papa, I would ask, why would you drink for days, weeks, months, and years without checking in on us at night? I would continue to ask if he ever realized his stepchildren loved him despite the abuse and missed playdates. To my mother, mi mamá, I would not ask anything, but rather hug and place my fingers in between her fingers and tell her thank you for this life that I have been given. I would continue to say I have forgiven all the lost moments together and to create new memories together. To my sister, I will tell her that I always put my body in front of hers to protect her and to say, I'm sorry for ever making you feel unsafe. To my youngest sibling, I would ask to share his feelings, boundaries, and favorite things to do as a family. To myself, I would, I, I would tell you that your parents were doing the best with what they knew and that you are the creator of your own narrative. You own your body and yourself. You must stay as authentic as possible and truly let love lighten the way. It has been almost 2.5 decades since that moment at age 5 occurred, but the first step of forgiveness has been to let the secret out. One New Year's Eve, I did. Mi mamita was the first person I finally revealed this to, and when I finished, she paused, stunned. Her eyelids covered her eyeballs, and slow tears ran down her tired, beautiful brown skin. She was in disbelief of how it all happened, and when she finally came to her own enlightenment, she looked at me and said, Perdóname por no estar con ustedes todo ese tiempo. Yo estuve trabajando. Forgive me for not being there with you and your sibling. I was working. It was the first time I heard my mother apologize for her absence during our childhood. At that moment, I knew I made the right decision to be brave and own my story to collectively begin healing. It was the moment my scar would begin to appear less visible, and I can finally lather aloe vera to heal the pain. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Dwayne, first, I just want to, again, wholeheartedly thank you for being part of this fellowship. And I don't know if you still can or want to be in conversation here for a moment. And if not, I completely understand that. I just feel so blessed by not only what you've brought to this fellowship, witnessing your storytelling process unfold. Truly has been Savila, it has been aloe vera, it has been dandelions, it has been sage. And I'm just wondering, well, there's two questions that I want to ask you. Just one for you. What has this meant for you as a storyteller, as an owner of your own narrative, as an artist, to engage in this journey and in this particular story that carries so much with it?
Well, thank you first for opening this space to all of the creators throughout this fellowship. Without community, there is no us. And I want us to first go back to that. And this collective really provided that psychological safety throughout week and week to be able to produce this product, right? And then to follow up on your second question, even for me as a creator of this story, I think it's a culmination of every person that I have ever met, and like feeling like I almost hid something in a way, but at the same time now seeing a reflection. It's mirrors and windows into the lives of others, but ultimately it feels just liberating to be able to share something so personal yet so raw and real that is, in my opinion, less commonly spoken about. And I would love to just uplift that for others as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we need to know the story to heal the story and heal our bodies and our own narratives. And I'm, again, just honored for being part of that process with you. And I'm also just wondering if you could say a couple things about what this has meant for you specifically as an educator, and how your own healing, your own process of claiming, owning your narrative is intertwined with your practice as a teacher.
For sure. That's such an important question because I think I started teaching like 5 years ago in New York City, and I would have never imagined being, a person who is teaching and leading, guiding others as well, when I was just there almost like a decade ago. So time flies by, but I am also the student in so many ways. My students really are teachers. They have everything they need, and I'm ones who to open up this like wealth of information, right? And what storytelling to me ultimately means now as a practice is to really, it opens up portals and they lead to trails with connection and imagination. And mi imaginación now is like, it's like, a cute little rainbow, and it's such, just leading trails of colors. And I just want to paint, and being able to know that I'm the only one whose validation is the one that I seek is really me. That's my final word.
That's beautifully said, Dwayne. So again, thank you so much for joining us and for being part of the fellowship. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Adiós.
Hasta luego. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. If you could just take a deep breath with me for a moment. At the count of 3, we're just going to take a deep breath together. We're going to hold it for a moment, and then we will release. So go ahead and just start emptying your lungs. And at the count of 3, we'll breathe in together. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. Hold it for a moment. And breathe out. I thank you for the opportunity to share with you these precious stories, this precious knowledge, this wisdom, this vulnerability, this courage that is embodied by each one of our storytellers this evening. Emily, Michael, Dr. Eva, Dwayne. I'm forever grateful to each one of you for saying yes to this fellowship, not only for sharing your stories today, but most importantly, for engaging in the process of crafting, as Dwayne mentioned, of opening up these portals, of exploring your past, and in that process also claiming the moment, claiming what's next, claiming the future, the imagined, the possible. It is fundamental, I believe, for us as educators. I would argue for us as human beings. I shared this yesterday as we close the evening, and I'll share it again today, to answer 2 questions that I believe lead us to a third critical question. But the first 2 questions that we need to answer, and again, to invoke Dwayne's work here about stepping into portals, where do we come from? And where do we come from brings up so much. Each one of us has been on our own path, and yet our paths are intertwined. We are all in relationship and connected with each other. And untangling what those connections are, what our pathways have been, looks different for each one of us. We find all kinds of memories in that process. Some of those memories are affirming and loving. Some of them are harmful and traumatic and difficult. Some of them contain a multitude of those elements all combined. And it is, I think, fundamental for us to acknowledge that in our past, in our ancestry, there is also so much joy, so much resilience, so much beauty. And that allows us to be able to answer the second question, which is, who am I? If I understand where I come from, I can find the words to shape who I am today as a multidimensional being, how I have continued to evolve, what are the identities that I'm claiming, how am I showing up in the world, how am I owning my own narrative? And then as educators, we can answer a third question, where do we go from here? And our education system is in desperate need of guidance. And I believe that our teachers, 4 of them we met today, and we got to know them intimately today as readers, as educators, as healers, as memory keepers, recipe keepers. Those stories can guide us. I said at the opening today, and I'll say it again, we move in the direction of the stories that we tell. Our well-being is intertwined with the stories we tell. So thank you again to all of our fellows. Thank you to all of you for joining us this evening, and to our dear partners at the Latinx Education Collaborative for saying yes also to this ongoing partnership. We look forward to sharing more stories with you. We do have, as Ivan mentioned, a couple storytellers who couldn't join us this evening. So please stay tuned. Gracias y hasta luego.